While other teams are making explosions in trades and big signings of major quarterbacks, the Steelers are sitting quiet as a church mouse just as they normally do, which is what I was telling you was the plan all along. But those moves do impact, the way I see it, the draft plans coming up for the Steelers and how things might play out, especially in the first round. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Joining me today will be Tony Serino of the AFC North podcast. We're going to talk a lot about what these moves meant and what opportunities will be with the Steelers at the 20th overall pick in the first round. This is the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Hit the like button on this video if you're enjoying the video. Hit the subscribe button for our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content. You can also, if you want to help us out, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment. When you do both, you get a shout out at the end of the show. Remember, we thank you for making us your first listen every day. Joining me today, our man, Tony Serino, for a Tony Wednesday.
Yeah, it's another one. It's 3 weeks in a row now. It's tough.
Yeah, it's becoming a trend, man. I'm just used to it. You and Wes can't get on the same page, so I have to just forget doing the alliteration things. It's fine.
I'll have to just go by West from now on, and he'll just we'll change our names, and that's really the easiest way. Because like I just can't make Mondays work, and so it's like the easier thing to do is just change our names. Wes Serino on the show today.
Wes Serino and Tony Euler. That's actually that's
Not
actually gonna work.
See? Huh?
Anyways, Tony, let's lead off with the big news that's impacted the entire NFL. We've been chirping about this for weeks, months even, about Aaron Rodgers. Will he be a Pittsburgh Steeler? Does he love the Steelers? Is he playing? We don't know. And it finally ends. The Green Bay Packers are just signing him to a massive extension. I believe it's a 4-year extension worth $200 million total. Somehow they're saying it lowers the cap.
It lowers
I don't know.
The cap, which is my favorite.
I don't know how that works. I just, unless they're
void years, baby.
But that's what I'm saying. It has to be like 20 void years or some stuff like that. But I look at that and I'm just like, yeah, that was what I didn't see it happening. I didn't see any of this working because that's a whole bunch of money to be thrown at a dude. And a dude like, you're excited about him this year, but again, he's 38. And what's the guarantee that in 4 years where you'll be giving him all that money, he's still going to be having that? But Aaron Rodgers signs that, he comes off the market, and then quickly afterwards, Seattle Seahawks trade Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, Noah Fant, and defensive lineman Shelby Harris. Oh, and by the way, the Broncos also got a 4th-round pick with Russell Wilson.
You forgot the most important piece.
What?
I mean, Drew Lock's a part of that deal.
I thought I said Drew Lock. My bad. My bad. I thought I said Drew Lock. But Seattle gets an absolute haul for Russell Wilson. And this was, again, why I was saying I don't think the Steelers are going to be in on any of these big moves because 2 firsts and 2 seconds and a former first-round pick, that's a lot to ask of this team right now. I mean,
and the Steelers would have to give up more likely because there's a big difference between the 9th pick and the 20th pick.
Exactly. Like the Steelers will probably have to give up legitimately 3 first-round picks for the Seahawks to be like, okay, we're in for that. And you also have to think that the reason this happened right after Aaron Rodgers signed that was because the Broncos were waiting. They were sitting there saying we wanted to see what was going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, and as soon as that was made official, all right, we're moving to the next one. And
Did you see the Broncos put out some they did the whole, they leaked to Ian Rappaport and they said this had nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers' decisions today.
Yeah, okay.
We've been working for weeks on this.
Tony gave the most sarcastic thumbs up. If you're listening to this, you missed out on that. But Tony, I want to get your thoughts on the move. And just on the both moves and how it kind of changes things, because now that AFC West, that's the best quarterback division in football.
Oh yeah, and it's why I thought, if there was ever a chance that Rodgers would want to come, and like you said, it was always extremely unlikely. I mean, we're talking about like 10% chance, 5% chance, 1% chance that he actually comes.
Just
think about all the things that had to happen in order for it to get done, right? First of all, Rodgers was talking about not just, being traded, but he talked about he could retire, right? So first of all, Rodgers has to want to play football. Then he has to decide he doesn't want to play for Green Bay anymore. And then he has to decide, in all likelihood, in order for him to be a Steeler, like you said, the compensation part of this was going to be too much for the Steelers. I mean, we've talked in the past about how this team has been reluctant to even move up for a young player in the draft that they like. I mean, they've only done it, twice? They did it with Palomalu and they did it with Devin Bush. We've talked about, just their inability to trade away first-round picks in general, right? And they've done it, in our lifetimes once for Minka Fitzpatrick. So if Rodgers wanted to come to Pittsburgh, he would have likely had to tell Green Bay, like, I want to go to Pittsburgh or I'm going to retire. So that would have drove the compensation down a little bit because, like you said, for 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 players, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for Russell Wilson. And that AFC West becomes, that is a gauntlet. I always thought, why would Rodgers want to leave the
NFC North that he could just bully every year?
I mean, look, and I think we both like Justin Fields, and I think Justin Fields does have a bright future in that division. But right now,
it's rough.
Green Bay is they're easily the best team in that division. So leaving that, especially once you figure out, I think Rodgers figured out, like, okay, Devontae Adams is staying, right, because they're going to franchise tag him. Yeah, I think that made a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers now have to kind of move on to, as we get into next week, that's the exciting part. That's the next exciting kind of milestone for the Steelers, which is Trubisky.
Okay.
No, but I mean, I think a veteran is coming next week. I think we both know, right? In all likelihood, in the next couple of weeks, they're going to sign a vet. It's just a matter of who.
It's just a matter of who, and that's something that we've discussed on this show. We'll discuss again as we get closer to that. But I think there's also another component of this that relates to the Steelers' draft plans, because we've talked about, not only would they sign a veteran quarterback, even if they signed a Trubisky, that wouldn't preclude them for if Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis fell into their hands. They'd be like, hey, we're drafting you and we're taking 4 arms to camp. That's what Kevin Colbert said all along. This is our plan. That's what I told you was going to happen. And here we're looking at it. But I think this trade of Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers staying and kind of how things have played out, I think that changes the landscape a little bit for how quarterbacks are going to be looked at and who might take a quarterback before the Steelers pick. And then they're going to be put in a position where, do you reach a quarterback in the first round to guys that maybe aren't worth the 20th overall pick? Or do you commit to that, or do you try to trade up? We'll talk about that in just a second here. But first, I got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Built Bars, of course, is the ultimate protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And if you're giving up on your New Year's resolutions, if you're starting to miss out on eating right and not doing the right things, Built Bar is here to help you out, because you're going to actually enjoy eating these. If you try the new Puffs flavors, you're going to find out that they're the best tasting Built Bars around. They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and extremely tasty. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, just like all Built Bars. They can come in flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, all of those. Very good flavors. And if you get any Built Bar, you know they're low in calorie but high in protein. They're 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Compare that to the average candy bar of 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. That's ridiculous. And there's so many flavors to choose from, whether it's coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie. All those flavors available when you go to Built.com. And if you go to Built.com right now, be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order of Built Bars at Built.com, where they'll get delivered right to your door. Again, that's LOCKED15 for 15% off of Built Bars at Built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Tony Serino. We're talking quarterbacks and the situation in the NFL after the Russell Wilson trade to the Broncos, with the haul that the Seattle Seahawks got, and, of course, Aaron Rodgers sticking in Green Bay. Now, again, I wanted to talk about the impact of the NFL draft, because, Tony, it seems to me like the consensus of guys who would be worth the 20th overall pick at quarterback are just Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. There's questions about Matt Corral. If he hadn't gotten hurt in his bowl game, maybe he'd be in that conversation. But there's questions of his injury, and there's also just questions of, is he even as good as those other 2 guys? So, and he's unfortunately not able to compete in the Senior Bowl or in the Combine because of those injuries, and that's not helping his case. Right. So now you sit here. If you're the Steelers, you're at 20, and the idea of being able to pick there was that, well, maybe Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett would fall to the Steelers because these others, this isn't the super quarterback year. This isn't Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes type of NFL draft, or Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, like all these guys that are getting hyped up for an entire year.
Yeah.
But now I look at it and I still don't think any quarterback goes in the top 5. But teams that could use a quarterback start to come up after that. You have the Panthers picking at 6th overall. The Seahawks, now quarterback deprived, unless you count Drew Lock. They're sitting there at Tony's laughing. Can't even keep a straight
not
face.
Wrong. Listen, like I said, it looked good against Mahomes in Week 18.
Mel Kiper was really big on the Drew Lock hype train back in the day. I remember that. But Seahawks sitting there at 9 now without Russell Wilson. They look like a team that could truly go say, like, let's go get our quarterback right here and right now. 9th overall seems kind of right. And this is why I say it changes, because if that's the Green Bay Packers, I'm not so sure. Like, if the Broncos had traded for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers get the 9th overall pick, I'm not so sure they go quarterback because they have Jordan Love, and Jordan Love's still, young. He's kind of like these guys where not a super high pedigree, but was worth, picking early in the draft.
Yeah.
That kind of state there. But then after Seahawks at 9, you have Washington at 11, who still doesn't have a quarterback. You got the Saints at 18. So that's 4 teams that pick before the Steelers. And then there's the Eagles, who have 3 picks. And if someone wants to trade up for one of those picks to get a quarterback, they could put themselves in that conversation. I just think with all those teams ahead of you, it's going to be tough for the Steelers to bank on getting Malik Willis or getting Kenny Pickett.
At 20, I think that's right. Yeah, I think if the Steelers really covet either of those players, I think they're going to have to go into or as close as they can get to the top 10, right? I think you talked about Washington at 11. Does feel like a possible trade with the Jets at 10 is where they need to go if they want one of those guys. Look, I know you said Malik Willis, probably not top 5, but there has been a lot of rumors recently that Detroit really likes Willis, and given how good Willis has been at every event, right? He was the standout at the Senior Bowl. Now he's the standout again, and by all reports, the interviews at the Combine. There's been reports now that that's a I mean, not saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility even at number 2 overall. That's way too high for the Steelers. So yeah, I think they're gonna have to move up in order to get one of those guys. Here's why I'm not worried though about Seattle. Here's why I think the Seattle thing doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
Because every time Seattle takes a 1st-round pick, it's some off the wall. They took Rashad Penny. They took Rashad Penny in the 1st round.
Oh my God. That one I was like, huh?
Exactly. Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks, nice player, but Jordan Brooks in the 1st round, what are we doing? I mean, they don't take a lot of 1st-round picks. It's the one thing about them you can say is like they don't, yes, they've missed on a lot. I mean, LJ Collier, same thing.
Wait, let me read out these player names that they've picked in the 1st round and see how many are recognized by our listeners. Listeners, play this game with us. If you're watching this on YouTube, here's the Seahawks' last 4 or 5 1st-round picks. They didn't have one last year. Jordan Brooks, linebacker in 2020. LJ Collier, defensive end in 2019. You know who that is? Rashad Penny. Now, Rashad Penny is easier to know because he's on your fantasy football team. Also won me the Locked On Fantasy Football
He got good all of a sudden. He got good. Bud Dupree at running back, right?
He was Bud Dupree.
A little bit.
Then in 2016, you had Jermaine Ifedi, guard. I mean, right. Yeah. Your face is my face. It's like, what are we actually counting here? So those are your last 4 1st-round picks. Then they did hit with Frank Clark, but I think
that was a 2nd-round pick. Second round pick. No, you got to go back all the way to 2012 now.
Bruce Irvin was the last I think good 1st-round pick that they had.
It's good enough. I mean, that was a great 2nd and 3rd round pick that year. It's a little bit better.
Right. It was Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson that year. That was what made that draft class. But point being, the Seahawks, you're right. The Seahawks can be very weird, but maybe that's what makes it weird is if Malik Willis is there and people are thinking what if Sauce Gardner's there? What if Jordan Davis is there? What if one of these superstar players that everyone's like, we got to have, he's a game changer on defense or on the offensive line, and they go Malik Willis, and Malik Willis just turns out to not be all the hype. And he could be the hype. I'm not saying he's not, because I do think he's worth the shot, but that's why I'm saying I'm just not so sure the Steelers are going to get either of those guys. The only way they might end up with one of these quarterbacks, and that might be Matt Corral, because I don't think the Steelers are trading up this year, is if they trade back into the back end of the 1st round And then they're saying, okay, we'll take Corral here, but we picked up an extra second round pick. And so we could justify getting him to get other 2 more skill players later.
What about Howell, Sam Howell? Because I think it's if I'm imagining what Kevin Colbert's board looks like right now, I think it's Willis 1, Pickett 2, Howell 3.
That'd be interesting. I know that the Steelers were excited about him. They when he was playing against Kenny Pickett, it was a big deal because it was at Heinz Field, and I remember walking past Kevin Colbert and covering, because I was covering Pitt for that game. Yeah. But I think that's a possibility, but I don't know. I look at Matt Corral, I'm just like, he's a better quarterback than Sam Howell. At least in my take. I also think I'd take Desmond Ridder before Sam Howell. I'm just not a Sam Howell guy.
Mark me down for Ridder to Seahawks at 9, by the way. I want to put that on the record today.
Oh, no,
Ridder to the Seahawks.
That would break the internet.
Wow.
That would be Cleveland Farrell going to the Raiders at 6th overall or whatever they picked him.
4th overall, something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Because we were all, that was the year where we were all wondering, would the Steelers be able to get a Devin Bush or someone like that, and that happened. But point being, that could be there. But I think if the Steelers wanted to go that route, I think if you wanted to get Sam Howell or Desmond Ridder, 2nd or 3rd round is fine. Then you don't have to trade back. Just take your 1st round pick on your skill player, and then wait till later, and then just get whoever you think is good in that 2nd round. But I don't see Sam Howell being a 1st round guy. I have a hard time justifying Matt Corral unless they drop back into the back end of the higher 20s to the 30s of the 1st round.
Yeah.
And that's why, to me, I just think this more so locks in the idea that they're going to go after a Jordan Davis, a Devin Lloyd. And even this came up because in our Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Ryan Tracy and Cruz, those guys are Crocs. Those guys, they had the Steelers taking Malik Willis, but passing on Andrew Booth, who fell to them. And I'm sorry, if Andrew Booth's there, when was the last time the Steelers got to draft a top quarterback?
No. I listen, don't get me wrong. You're not going to get me to say a bad thing about Andrew Booth. I love Andrew Booth. But if the Maserati's there, Chris, take the keys. Take the keys and drive it. Let's go. Let's go. I'm going to take it for a spin.
But if
Andrew.
But if he's not there, because again, this has been my argument since the start of the draft, or since the start of draft season and talking and everything. If you're talking maybe 3 or 4 offensive tackles, 4 edge rushers, maybe 5 edge rushers going off the boards, 2 quarterbacks, maybe 3 or 4 receivers, and then all these different guys going, you could get Malik Willis could be gone, Kenny Pickett could be gone, and then you're sitting there with Andrew Booth, versus Devin Lloyd, versus versus Linderbaum, versus Zion Johnson, and then you're at a real good decision. I'm happy with any of those directions.
Here's where I'm not, because if they don't look. If they didn't end up with Rodgers, they ended up with, when Wilson was probably not going to happen. Rodgers seemed like more likely than Wilson, but they ended up with those guys. We'll see what happens in free agency next week. There was a report tonight that, obviously Trubisky played with Daboll. Daboll is now the coach of the Giants, so it seems likely that that's going to be a landing spot. That would make a lot of sense. So if they miss out on Trubisky, here's my thought going into the draft, guys. If they can't get the Maserati, okay, if he's not there at 20, I want a position that's good, that's going to help the Steelers, but not too much, Because so I would take, look, here's my dream at 20 now. Zion Johnson at 20.
I'm on the Zion Johnson train. I've been talking about all week.
Because here's the thing. Let's say it's the best case scenario for Zion Johnson. Let's say it's Quentin. He turns out to be Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson's very good.
Okay.
Quentin Nelson's not going to turn you into a great team, and that keeps us right in line with where we need to be. Tank Commander 2022, boys. All right, we got it. Listen, you want the Steelers to get good, but not too good.
I want everyone to understand the logic jump this man made. He's like, see, you draft Zion Johnson, and he just turns out to be Quentin Nelson. I'm like, whoa.
Listen, I'm saying in the best case scenario, he's still not it's a difference maker in the long run. In the best case scenario, it's not good enough to actually make a difference as far as wins and losses. I like Quentin Nelson a lot. But I don't know that Quentin Nelson is the difference between 3 or 4 wins a year, like the Maserati might be. Okay? So if I can't get the Maserati, then I want to tank. I'm tanking now because eyes on the prize. I didn't get Maserati, I didn't get Kenny. We're bad for Bryce, Chris. We're bad for Bryce.
You're back on that train. I think there's certainly options there, but I want to explore more of those options with you, because now if quarterback is legit out of play, there has to be a focus to say, hey, what are your priorities? We're going to sort out those priorities right after this in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino. We're talking about the NFL draft and how it's been, how the landscape's been impacted by, of course, Aaron Rodgers sticking with the Packers, Russell Wilson being traded to the Broncos. But again, going back into this with the Steelers and their draft plans, I mean, we all know the Steelers need to rebuild the offensive line for the future. I've been adamant about Tyler Linderbaum, about Zion Johnson as guys who could fall to 20 and be very reasonable picks there. I have a hard time seeing any of the offensive tackles fall just because they're too good, and there's too many teams that love to pick offensive tackles that are going to be before the Steelers. So that's why I'm thinking interior offensive line. But Tony, there's also the thing you have to consider that the Steelers are trying to build an elite defense. To me, that like on top of the offensive line, they're trying to continue to build this core to be one of the best defenses that will carry it until they not only find the franchise quarterback of the future, but then that guy develops into being your franchise quarterback, which on top of like, say it happens next year, say they're bad for Bryce next year, right? Bryce is going to be a rookie, but Bryce is still going to need, and this could be Bryce, this could be Stroud, this could be Armstrong, this could be anybody. It's going to take them, maybe 2 or 3 years to become their self. I mean, Josh Allen, look at him compared to his rookie year to where he is now. It took years to progress. Not everyone's just going to hop in like Patrick Mahomes, and even he sat for his rookie year. But it's going to come down to what position do you think is best to pick there, as far as that. And I hear you out about offensive line and maybe it doesn't impact. I'm not on the tank commander. I don't believe in tanking. I think it's the worst. It's the worst philosophy you have. Most teams that tank don't recover from it until much, much later. But you have to ask yourself, with the strengths that we've seen this year, the speed at wide receiver, the talent at cornerback, and I truly think cornerback might be the move. And this is why I'm hyping this one. I know I've talked about Devin Lloyd and Zion Johnson a lot, but if in the situation that Croc and Ryan did for Locked On NFL Draft, if their situation plays out where Andrew Booth Jr. is sitting there and you're sitting like, we can actually get a top grade cornerback in a good class of cornerbacks. Because like after that, there's still Trent McDuffie, there's still Roger McCreary, there's still guys that are really good. But if you can get one of those the Steelers have never had a shot at one of those guys. And don't tell me Xavier Howard because he was a second round pick. Everybody passed on him. I'm talking about a guy that everybody's talking about.
Artie Burns.
All right, I'm just gonna let you talk now because you said that.
All right, well, listen, I'll be honest with you. I was with you on the corner class right up until the combine. You want to talk about arm length, wingspan for a second?
Yeah.
Because that came up during the combine, and people started talking about. You started hearing the draft community go like, "Wow, this is a real concern here." And then I saw the chart, which is, look, here are all the Pro Bowl caliber corners in the league right now, and here's their wingspan, and here's where this entire class. I mean, literally, like this entire class just does not fit the mold of what has traditionally been a quality corners in this league, or the impactful outside corners. Now, a guy like, you talk about McCreary. McCreary, I think, is still a player who I'm intrigued by. He's got very, very short arms, but it was like 28, I think 28 and a half, something like that. So they were, but I always thought he could play in the slot. I mean, he could be a slot guy, and in that way, you don't need the kind of wingspan you need on the outside. I just don't know if I want to take a slot corner in round one.
Yeah.
But unless I have ulterior motives,
this is another tank strategy.
I mean, listen, nickel corner is a nice position. You do need it, but I don't know if it's the difference between wins and losses. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with like did you see the franchise numbers that came out, or the fifth year option? Right. According to the NFL, the 3 least impactful positions, or the positions they're least willing to pay for: running back, linebacker, safety. And the Steelers do need a linebacker and a safety. Right? Yeah. I mean, I think in this draft, in all likelihood, because we'll see what happens with Edmonds. We know that they're going to take a linebacker. Well, I guess they haven't released Schobert yet, so we'll see. But here's the thing: if you were going to tank, you would want to keep Schobert around because
Okay, stop with this. If you want to tank thing, all right. But because also I wouldn't rule out, even though Devin Lloyd didn't run as fast as I thought he would. But 6'3", 235, really good against the run, and knows how to defend the pass. He may not be the fastest to do it. That's still in the range that you could use. But also, I liked the testing, at least from Christian Harris,
Yep.
Before I was thinking like, oh, well, good run stuffer. If you get him in the second round, okay. But there's also Chad Muma. Now I'm a little bit more on the Christian Harris train because he ran one of the fastest 40s. Maybe, actually I think he ran the fastest 40 of the linebacker class at 4.44. So, so Devin Lloyd, the one reason I might not take Devin Lloyd in the first round is because I am that much on for a Christian Harris, a Chad Muma, Darian Beavers, Channing Tindall, Brian Asamoah. Like, there's guys later in the second and third rounds I think that Steelers could live with.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Second and third round is where I think they live on linebacker, because that there's, like, you just named all those guys. I mean, the guy Leo, we're gonna butcher his name, apologies, but Leo Chanel.
I think it's Chanel.
Chanel, yeah. I mean, I think he posted
Chanel.
Chanel.
Yeah, it's Cheneal. Sorry, Leo, we messed up your name.
Yep. I think he posted a elite athletic score according to Kenley Platt's.
The math bomb. Yeah, follow at math bomb. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, I believe he posted a 10 in relative athletic score. Yeah, so that's very, very good. And obviously Wisconsin, we know that the Steelers have a history of drafting Wisconsin defensive players recently.
I think Chanel actually, he talked about TJ Watt talking to him, like he said, like he's giving him some advice. So like there's a connection there, and that certainly could be something that the Steelers keep an eye on. But to your point, if there's all these linebackers in the second and third rounds, maybe you don't need to take one in the first round. And that puts cornerback in play, that puts offensive line back in play, but also defensive line. I mean, and there's people are all over the place. I want to hear this from you. Where are you on the defensive line market? Because some people are saying Jordan Davis top 10, but like if you go to like the draftnetwork.com, they rank Jordan Davis as the 31st prospect. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I don't see Jordan Davis falling that far in this draft.
Nah, not anymore. Not after what he. I mean, you want to talk about an athletic freak? My goodness, it's like you really don't want to compare someone to Aaron Donald, but you're like,
well, he's pretty doggone. But here's the other thing: he's huge. Aaron Donald is like 6'2", 6'3". He's smaller. This guy's 6'6", 340, and he's moving like this. Like it's a different thing. And also the same thing goes for Devontae Wyatt, who's 6'3", 315, but he's showing a lot of great athleticism. With you consider them, DeMarvin Leal, Perrion Winfrey, and Travis Jones, who's one of my favorite players in this draft. There's a lot of dudes in the first and second rounds that you could be looking at and say, DT, get in there.
Yeah, exactly. Quincy, the guy I do AFC North talk with, he loves Perrion Winfrey. Loves Winfrey. I know Travis Jones is another player who I think would fit well with the Steelers. I think D-line, look, if Tuitt's coming back, if the Steelers have clarity on Tuitt coming back, I don't know. It's hard for me then to say, well, still D-line, because then you're really getting a guy who's really going to play more nose. But yeah, it would be hard for me to take a first rounder at that point. I think I would go back to like the corner class or linebacker at that point.
Tony, great topics. We're going to be talking this for a long time, but let people know where they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. Find me on AFC North Talk. It's a YouTube show all about the AFC North. We'll be back on Friday.
Absolutely. I'm Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks for checking us out. We'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers.